When I saw the lawyer hand me the will, I had no idea that the man I'd been married to for over 15 years had kept such a secret from me. My whole life was about to change. It had been a long month of mourning. My father-in-law, Charles Harrington, passed away quietly in his sleep at the age of 89. He had lived a good life, wealthy, respected, and a little intimidating if I'm being honest. But to me, he was more than that. He was the father I never had. He had taken me in when I married Adam, welcoming me into the family with open arms. Our relationship was warm, full of shared dinners, advice, and even the occasional joke. He wasn't just Adam's father. He was like a second father to me. When he passed, I found myself comforting Adam, the way I had always done. We had our share of challenges over the years, but we had built something real. Or at least, I thought we had. In the aftermath of the funeral, when the grief started to subside, we began the difficult task of sorting through his estate. There was the house, the investments, his company, a small empire he had built from the ground up. Everything we thought we would inherit. Everything I thought was mine. But then, the lawyer called. He had an appointment for us. Adam and I sat in the office, across from the firm's lawyer, Richard Patterson, a man who had been the family attorney for decades. He was stern, professional, and didn't waste words. "Mr. Harrington," Richard said, looking over his glasses, "I'm afraid there's been a change in your father's will." Adam looked up, his face pale, his eyes confused. I could feel the tension building between us. Adam's hand reached for mine, but I pulled away. Something felt off. Richard's next words only confirmed it. "Your father has left the entirety of his estate to his caregiver, Amanda Reynolds." I froze. My heart stopped. I could feel my skin go cold as the words echoed in my ears. "What?" I asked, though it came out as a breath more than a word. "What do you mean, his caregiver?" Richard cleared his throat. "Amanda Reynolds was your father's primary caregiver for the last 5 years of his life. She was named as the sole beneficiary in the will." Adam's face was unreadable. He sat back in his chair, his fingers rubbing the edge of the table. But he never mentioned her in any of our conversations about the will. And why? Why would he leave everything to her? Richard glanced at the papers in front of him. "I don't have all the details, but it's all here in the will. Everything goes to her." The room felt like it was closing in on me. Everything I had imagined, the house we'd live in, the vacations we'd take, the future I had so carefully crafted with Adam, was suddenly in jeopardy. It wasn't just the money either. It was the principle of it all. I thought I knew my father-in-law. I had trusted him. But now, it felt like something had been stolen from me. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Richard looked at me, his expression softening, though I wasn't sure if it was out of sympathy or discomfort. "Amanda Reynolds has been a devoted caregiver to your father. She has been with him for many years, even before his final illness. From the looks of it, they were very close." I turned to Adam, my heart aching. He didn't meet my eyes. How could he do this? I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Adam's voice was low, strained. "I don't know, Sarah, but we need to find out more. We need to see the rest of the will." The lawyer shuffled through the papers before handing us another document. "There's more," he said quietly. "This document outlines the specifics. Amanda Reynolds is listed as not just the caregiver, but also the sole inheritor of the family trust." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. It felt like the ground had disappeared entirely, leaving me with nothing but emptiness. I couldn't breathe. I turned to Adam, searching his face for any sign that he was as shocked as I was. But all I saw was a man who looked like he was trying to swallow a bitter pill. "Adam," I said, my voice barely audible, "who is Amanda Reynolds? And why didn't you ever tell me about her?" His eyes flickered to mine, then away, and that's when I knew. I saw it in his face, the recognition, the guilt. He had been hiding something. Something much darker than just the will. My instincts told me that this wasn't just a matter of inheritance. This was a betrayal. A betrayal that ran far deeper than I could ever have imagined. I didn't know how to tell you," Adam said softly, his voice breaking. "I didn't know how to explain. I didn't want you to find out like this." "What are you talking about?" I whispered, feeling the cold rush of panic. Adam shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes shifting toward Richard. Richard said nothing, his gaze falling to the papers before him. There was an unbearable silence in the room, and then Adam finally spoke. "Amanda, she's been more than just my father's caregiver." His voice was barely a whisper now. "She's been my wife." I stared at him, my mind trying to process the words. My husband's wife? How could this be? How could he have kept this from me for so long? What do you mean? My voice cracked, my throat closing up. Your wife? How could you marry her without telling me? How could you hide that from me for years? Adam's face was pale. I didn't want to hurt you, Sarah. I never meant to keep this from you, but I had to. We've been married for 15 years. I didn't know how to tell you that. The words hung in the air like a suffocating fog. 15 years. I had been living a lie for 15 years. The man I had trusted, the man I had built my life with, had been married to someone else this entire time. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, the shock of it all consuming me. Adam, my husband, had been married to another woman, and now she had inherited everything. My father-in-law's fortune, my place in the family, my future. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this right now, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I turned and walked out of the office, the sound of Adam's voice calling after me fading into the background. I couldn't hear him. I couldn't hear anything over the roar of the storm inside my head. Everything was crashing down. I left the lawyer's office in a haze, the weight of Adam's confession crashing over me with every step I took. The world felt as though it was spinning too fast, and I couldn't catch my breath. 15 years. 15 years of my life had been spent with a man who had lied to me about everything. My marriage, my future, everything was a lie. I remember walking aimlessly, barely aware of the passing cars or the people around me. The streets were buzzing with life, but I felt like I was in a different world, one where I no longer belonged. I should have been with Adam. I should have been home, grieving the loss of his father, helping him through this. Instead, I was alone, with nothing but a storm of emotions to keep me company. Anger, betrayal, fear. I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that Adam had been married to someone else for so long. Amanda. The name echoed in my head like a dark reminder of everything I didn't know about the man I had shared my life with. How could he do this to me? How could he marry her without ever telling me? How had he kept such a monumental secret? I couldn't even look at him the same way anymore. The person I thought I knew, the man I had trusted, loved, built a life with, wasn't who I thought he was. By the time I reached home, my body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. I walked through the door and found myself standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the walls that once felt like a sanctuary. But now they felt like a cage. A reminder of everything that had been taken from me. I heard Adam's voice from upstairs. He was calling my name, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I face him? How could I look at him after everything he had done? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things, to tear the house apart. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the silence settle in. Finally, after what felt like hours, I climbed the stairs. I needed to confront him. I needed answers. Adam was sitting on the edge of the bed when I walked into the room, his head bowed, his hands clasped in his lap. He didn't look up when I entered. I stood at the doorway, watching him, wondering how I had ever missed the signs. The guilt in his posture, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, he was a stranger to me now. Sarah, he started, his voice trembling. I don't know what you want me to say. I know I've hurt you, and I never wanted to. I never wanted this to happen. You never wanted this? I repeated, my voice tight with anger. You never wanted this? How could you say that? You married someone else without telling me. You kept a whole life from me. 15 years, Adam. 15 years. You've been lying to me for 15 years, and now you want to act like you never meant to hurt me. I didn't mean to, Sarah, he pleaded, standing up from the bed and stepping toward me. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could keep it all together. I thought I could protect you from this. Protect me? I laughed bitterly. You thought you could protect me by lying to me? By marrying her behind my back? By pretending like nothing was wrong while you lived a double life? You thought you were protecting me? Adam's face crumpled, his hands reaching out to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I've been trapped in this too. I never wanted it to go this far. I never thought I'd get caught. Caught? I repeated. So, this was all just some game to you? How many more secrets are there, Adam? How much more are you hiding from me? He shook his head, stepping back. No, Sarah, it's not like that. Please, just listen. But I couldn't listen anymore. I couldn't stand hearing his excuses, his explanations. There was no more room in my heart for his lies. I'm done listening, I said, my voice cold. You've made your choices, Adam. And I've made mine. You've betrayed me, and there's no coming back from this. He reached out, his voice desperate. Please, don't leave me. We can work through this. We'll fix everything. I'll do whatever it takes. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there anymore, listening to him beg for forgiveness when he had already taken everything from me. My trust, my love, my future, all of it had been shattered. I'm not going to fix this, Adam. Not for you. Not for her. I'm going to fix this for me. And with that, I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not in that house, not with him. Not anymore. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I moved into a small apartment, trying to keep my life as normal as possible, even though nothing felt normal anymore. I filed the paperwork for a divorce, contacted a private investigator to look into Amanda's past, and started gathering everything I needed to fight for what was mine, what should have been mine. But every step forward was followed by 1,000 questions. How had I been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? Adam had always been a good actor, but he had been my husband. I had trusted him with my heart, with my life. And now I had to rebuild it all. David, my lawyer, called me every few days with updates. The investigation into Amanda's marriage was moving forward, but there was no guarantee that I would win. In fact, the chances of overturning the will seemed slim. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. I couldn't. Not after everything I had lost. One evening, after I had spent hours going over my legal options, I decided to visit Adam's family home. I needed to see it, to feel the weight of it all. When I stepped inside, the emptiness was overwhelming. The house was too quiet, too still. Everything felt like a ghost of what it once was. I walked into the study, where I had spent so many afternoons with my father-in-law, talking about life, about the future. But now it all felt hollow. There were no more conversations to be had here. No more advice to be given. But what about Adam? What about the life we had built? I could still hear his voice in the back of my mind, begging me to come back, to forgive him. But I couldn't. I couldn't forgive the man who had betrayed me so completely. The next few days were a blur of legal papers and calls with David. I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was still missing, some key piece of the puzzle that would help me win. Every time I thought I had a solid case, the pieces just didn't fit together. Amanda's lawyer was proving to be a formidable opponent, using every trick in the book to keep her hold on the estate. But I couldn't back down. I was determined to take control of my own future. I spent my nights combing through the family records, Adam's birth certificate, his father's will, the marriage certificates, and every document that could hold some clue about Amanda's involvement with my husband. The house I had once imagined as our home now felt like an impenetrable fortress. I didn't want to be there, but I also couldn't stay away. Every corner seemed to remind me of the life I had lost. One evening, after sifting through more papers, I stumbled across something that stopped me cold, a photo. It was old, faded, and tucked away in a drawer I hadn't thought to open. It was a picture of Adam, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. She had her arm wrapped around him, and they were smiling, laughing together. At first, I thought it was just an old picture of Adam and a friend, but then my heart skipped a beat as I realized who it was. Amanda. The photo must have been taken years ago, long before I met Adam. It was a candid shot, showing a level of intimacy that made me feel sick to my stomach. I had been right all along. Amanda wasn't just the caregiver. She had been his partner, his wife, for all these years. And Adam had kept me in the dark, hidden in plain sight. I felt the rage bubbling inside me. How could he have done this to me? How could he have lied to me for so long? I hadn't heard from Adam in days, but I knew he was still around. I could feel his presence in the house. Every time I passed his study or the dining room, I thought I saw him lurking just out of sight. But I couldn't face him. Not yet. Not after everything. The phone call came late one evening, just as I was about to fall asleep. I picked up, and for a moment, the silence on the other end made me hesitate. "Sarah?" Adam's voice cracked through the static. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything flood back to the surface. "What do you want, Adam?" I asked, my voice calm, even though the anger surged within me. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice pleading. "I'm sorry. I know I've made mistakes, but you have to understand. Everything I did for us. For our future." "For our future?" I repeated, disbelief seeping into my tone. "You've destroyed everything, Adam. You've taken it all, my trust, my love, my future. You don't get to ask for forgiveness anymore." "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I thought I could make it work, Sarah. But I was wrong." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to keep the tears from falling. "It's too late for apologies, Adam. You've been living a lie for so long, and I can't keep pretending it's all going to be okay. I can't live in a world where everything is just one big lie." There was a long pause on the other end, and then Adam's voice came, quieter, almost desperate. "Please, don't leave me, Sarah. Don't walk away." I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, but I couldn't let them sway me. "You don't get to keep me anymore, Adam. Not after everything." "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "I never thought it would end like this. Please, Sarah. We've built so much together." "But it wasn't real," I said, the words finally spilling out, sharp and bitter. "You built it on a foundation of lies. And now I'm left with nothing." The call ended, and I sat there in the silence that followed, staring at the walls that used to feel like home. I had done it. I had finally told him the truth. But it didn't make anything feel better. There was no relief. No closure. Only the heavy weight of reality settling in. I spent the rest of the night trying to process everything that had happened. I thought about the photo I had found earlier, the one of Amanda and Adam. It kept replaying in my mind. I knew now that my life with Adam had never been the life I thought it was. It had all been a facade, built on deception. But I wasn't just going to sit back and let Amanda win. She had her share of secrets, too. If she thought she was walking away with everything, she was wrong. I was going to fight for what was mine. The next day, I made another call. This time, it was to the private investigator I had hired. I had already asked him to look into Amanda's background, but I needed more. I needed to know everything about her past, her connections, and most importantly, her marriage to Adam. I needed leverage. David was still working tirelessly on the legal front, but I couldn't wait for the case to unfold. I couldn't wait for the courts to decide my fate. I had to take control. The investigation into Amanda's background was taking longer than expected, but a few days later, David called with some updates. "We've uncovered something significant," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "It's about her first marriage. It's going to make all the difference in your case." I held my breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "What is it?" "She was never legally divorced from her first husband," David said, a hint of triumph in his voice. "That means her marriage to Adam is invalid. And if we can prove that, everything changes." I felt my heart skip a beat. This was it. This was the break I had been waiting for. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm positive," David replied. "If we can prove she was never divorced, Adam's marriage to her is a sham. And that means her claim to the estate is invalid." I closed my eyes, a sense of vindication washing over me. Finally, there was a chance, my chance, to take back what was mine. "Let's do this," I said, my voice steady. "Let's make sure Amanda doesn't get away with this." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I could feel the tension building as David worked with the investigator to finalize the evidence. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about holding Amanda accountable for what she had done to me, to Adam, and to our family. This fight wasn't just legal, it was personal. Every phone call, every document, felt like a step toward reclaiming the life I had lost. I met with David the day after I received confirmation about Amanda's first marriage. His office was a small, quiet space, but it was where I felt the most grounded. David wasn't just a lawyer. He had become my ally in this fight. We'd gone over every aspect of the case, but now it was time to focus on the next steps. Time to make our move. We've got enough now to prove the marriage was invalid, David said, sitting across from me. Amanda's first marriage was never legally dissolved. That means Adam's marriage to her has no standing. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. So what now? How do we move forward? We're filing a petition to contest the will, he explained. With the evidence we've gathered, we're going to show that Amanda has no legal right to inherit anything from your father-in-law's estate. Once we challenge her marriage, the court will have to reconsider the will. I let out a slow breath. The weight of the situation was heavy on my shoulders, but I knew this was the only way forward. If I let Amanda walk away with everything, I would never forgive myself. But there's more, David continued. The challenge to the marriage is only one part of this. We need to make sure the court sees Amanda's actions for what they are. She's not just a caregiver, she's a woman who manipulated a situation for her own gain. We need to make that clear. I looked at him, the determination in my eyes matching his. And how do we do that? We're going to go public, David said. We'll present the facts in a way that exposes Amanda's manipulation. The more people see what she's done, the harder it will be for her to maintain control of the estate. Public opinion can be a powerful tool in cases like this. I thought for a moment. The idea of going public made me nervous. But I knew it was the only way to ensure Amanda didn't walk away unscathed. She needed to answer for her actions not just in court, but in the eyes of the people she had deceived. I'm ready, I said, the words feeling stronger than I'd expected. Let's do this. The next few weeks felt like a blur. We filed the petition, and David's team worked tirelessly to prepare for the court battle. Amanda's lawyer fought back hard, of course, trying to stall and intimidate us at every turn. But we were ready. Every piece of evidence we had gathered about Amanda's first marriage, her role in the family, and her manipulation of Adam was meticulously organized and ready to be presented. One day, I received a call from Adam. It had been weeks since we last spoke. He'd been avoiding me, and I had done my best to avoid him. But now, he was reaching out again. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew this was a pivotal moment. If he was calling, it meant he was either going to confront me about the legal proceedings or, just maybe, he had finally realized the depth of his mistakes. I'm sorry, Sarah, Adam said, his voice heavy with emotion when I picked up the phone. I know I can't undo everything I've done, but I need to explain. I need you to understand why I did what I did. I wasn't sure I could handle another round of his apologies, but I knew I had to hear him out. Explain? Explain what, Adam? You lied to me for 15 years. You married Amanda without telling me. You let her take everything from me. What is there to explain? I never meant for it to end up like this, he said quietly. Amanda and we had a history. But I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing me? I repeated bitterly. You were afraid of losing me, so you kept this secret from me? You hid your entire life, your wife, your marriage, from me for all these years. I didn't know how to tell you, Adam admitted, his voice breaking. I was ashamed. I didn't know how to face you with the truth. But I never wanted to hurt you. I closed my eyes, my hands gripping the phone tightly. I trusted you, Adam. You were my husband. I shared my life with you, and you kept this from me. And now, because of your lies, I'm fighting for everything that was stolen from me. There was a long pause. I could hear Adam's breath on the other end of the line, but I wasn't ready to hear his excuses anymore. I don't know what you expect from me, Adam, I said, my voice firm. I'm not going to let you off the hook. You have to answer for what you've done, and so does Amanda. Please, Sarah, he begged. I want to fix this. We can fix this together. I laughed, but it was bitter, devoid of any warmth. Fix it? You can't fix this, Adam. You've destroyed everything. All we can do now is clean up the mess you've made. He was quiet for a moment, and then I heard the desperation in his voice. I love you, Sarah. I always have. I'm sorry. I don't want your apologies, Adam, I said sharply. I want you to face the consequences. You've destroyed my life, and now it's time to make things right." A week later, we were back in court. The courtroom was tense, filled with the kind of energy that only comes when the stakes are high. Adam sat on one side, Amanda across from him, her lawyer beside her. I could see the anxiety in Adam's eyes, but there was no sympathy left in me. Not anymore. David presented our case, methodical and precise. Every piece of evidence, every document, was laid out clearly for the judge. We presented the facts about Amanda's first marriage, showing that it had never been dissolved, making her marriage to Adam invalid in the eyes of the law. The courtroom was silent as the evidence was discussed, the weight of it hanging in the air. Amanda's lawyer tried to argue that her marriage to Adam had been legitimate, that she had done nothing wrong. But the facts were clear. The law was on our side. As the judge listened to both sides, I couldn't help but think about everything I had lost. My father-in-law's estate, the life I had built with Adam, it all felt like it had been swept away in an instant. But in that moment, I knew I was doing the right thing. I was fighting for myself, for my dignity, for my future. The judge called for a recess, and as we filed out of the courtroom, I felt the weight of the battle I had fought. But it wasn't over yet. Amanda and Adam would have to answer for what they had done. And I wasn't going to stop until I had my justice. The tension in the courtroom felt unbearable. As I sat in the waiting area with David, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was hanging by a thread. I had been fighting for weeks, battling against a system that felt rigged in Amanda's favor. The evidence was solid, the law was clear, but there was still a sense of unease. What if the judge ruled in her favor? What if my fight was for nothing? David noticed my anxiety. He had been calm and collected throughout the entire process, his steady presence grounding me in moments of uncertainty. But today, even he seemed a little on edge. "Sarah," he said softly, "you've done everything you could. I'm confident in our case. You're doing the right thing." I nodded, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. "It just feels like nothing will ever be the same again, David. Even if we win, what do I have left? What's the point of getting back the estate when everything else is broken?" David paused, his eyes focused on something distant. "Sometimes, getting back what's rightfully yours isn't just about money or property. It's about reclaiming your sense of self, your dignity. And I think you've already begun that process." I glanced at him, grateful for his words, but unsure how to respond. The truth was, I had no idea what came next. Winning the case against Amanda and Adam might not fix the damage they had caused, but it would be a step toward rebuilding my life, piece by piece. The courtroom doors opened, and we were called back in. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Adam's face was grim, but he didn't look at me. Amanda, on the other hand, sat straighter than I had ever seen her, her eyes narrowed, as if she knew the judge's decision was about to determine everything. I took my seat as the judge entered, his expression unreadable. He sat down, shuffled through some papers, and then looked up at the room. "After reviewing all the evidence presented, I have come to a decision," the judge said, his voice calm but firm. "The marriage between Mr. Harrington and Ms. Reynolds is deemed invalid due to the existence of an undisclosed prior marriage. Therefore, the claim to the estate made by Ms. Reynolds is legally void." I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I heard those words. My heart leapt in my chest, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. We had won, but the judge wasn't done yet. In light of the findings, the will of the late Thomas Harrington will be revisited, and the estate will be redistributed according to the lawful heirs. I advise all parties to refrain from any further interference in the distribution process until all matters are settled. The room erupted in a murmur, but I barely heard it. I was too busy trying to process what had just happened. Amanda was no longer entitled to the estate. Adam's role in all of this was now a matter of public record. The weight of the decision was sinking in, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel something close to relief. David leaned over to me and whispered, "You did it, Sarah. This is your victory." I nodded, still in shock. But there was a sense of calm that followed. The battle wasn't over, but this was the turning point. I had fought for my right to be heard, to be seen, and I had won. The aftermath of the case was a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with financial advisors, and countless calls from people, some congratulating me, others still trying to sway my decision. But the truth was, I wasn't interested in anyone's opinion anymore. I had reclaimed what was mine. I met with Adam once more in the days following the ruling. He had been distant, his eyes hollow, and the regret in his voice was evident, but I didn't care. He had betrayed me in a way I could never forgive. "Sarah," he said quietly, standing across from me in the living room. The same room where we'd shared countless memories. It all felt so distant now. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to be honest with you now at least." I looked at him, emotions swelling in my chest. "What's left to be honest about, Adam? You've taken everything. You lied to me for years." "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he said, his voice shaking. "I made mistakes, Sarah. I made a lot of mistakes. I never should have kept this from you." "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "You never should have kept this from me. And now I have to live with the consequences of your lies. We have to live with them." He stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled back. I didn't want his touch. "Not now." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said. "Sorry doesn't give me back the life you took from me. Sorry doesn't give me back my dignity." Adam looked at me with pain in his eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for him. I had once believed that we could move past anything together, but this betrayal was too deep. It wasn't just about the estate. It was about everything we had built, everything I had believed in, and how it had been shattered. "Maybe one day you'll understand," I said, my voice steady but cold. "But not today. Not now." I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, a man broken by his own actions. In the following weeks, I took control of my future. The estate was redistributed, and I made sure that everything went to the rightful heirs. I rebuilt my life, slowly but surely. I moved forward with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. But the road to healing wasn't easy. There were still moments when I felt the sting of betrayal. There were days when I missed the man I had loved, even though I knew he was gone. But through it all, I learned something about myself. I was stronger than I ever realized. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not Adam or Amanda, take that away from me. It had been months since the court ruling, and the dust was beginning to settle. I had won the battle. Amanda's claim to the estate had been invalidated, and the rightful heirs had reclaimed their shares. Adam, though still in the picture, was a shadow of the man he used to be. He had apologized countless times, but his words meant little to me now. What he had done could never be undone. And what I had lost was irreplaceable. But through all of it, I had found something unexpected, my own strength. Every day felt like a victory in itself, even on the days when I wanted to crawl back into bed and never face the world again. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I found new joy in the small things, the smell of coffee brewing in the morning, the quiet hum of the city as I walked through the streets, the peace I had once taken for granted. I even began seeing a therapist. It wasn't easy to confront the pain of the past, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. Talking about the betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, unpacking all of it was exhausting, but necessary. In the process, I came to realize something important. I wasn't defined by what Adam had done to me. I was defined by how I chose to move forward. Adam still tried to reach out, but I wasn't interested in revisiting the past. I had made my peace with the fact that our marriage was over, and it was time for both of us to move on. I hadn't been able to forgive him, and I didn't know if I ever would. But I had forgiven myself. That was what mattered now. One afternoon, I found myself at a coffee shop in the heart of the city. The world around me buzzed with energy, but I felt calm, grounded. I was meeting with a potential client, a small boutique design firm that needed some branding work. As I sat at the table, the weight of the past seemed to lift, if only for a moment. I was no longer that woman who had been betrayed by her husband. I was Sarah, just Sarah. The meeting went well. The client was kind, professional, and had a clear vision for their brand. We discussed logos, color schemes, and possible designs, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of excitement. As we wrapped up, I walked out of the coffee shop with a sense of purpose I hadn't had in years. There was still a long way to go before I could call my life truly whole again, but this was a step in the right direction. I had my own business, my own identity, and I was starting to rebuild something I had lost. But as I walked toward my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the message and my stomach dropped. It was from Adam. "I'm not giving up on us, Sarah. I still want to try. Please, can we talk?" I stood there for a moment, staring at the screen. The anger, the sadness, the frustration, all of it came rushing back in an instant. I thought about the years I had spent with him, the way I had believed in us, in our future. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I couldn't let him back in. I typed a quick reply, my fingers shaking slightly. "There's nothing to fix, Adam. It's over. I've moved on. Please respect that." I hit send and shoved the phone back into my pocket, taking a deep breath. I couldn't allow him to control my life anymore. The world was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially him, take that away. The weeks passed, and the healing continued. I kept my head down, focused on my work, on the life I was building. The world was slowly becoming a place of possibilities again. I took on new clients, worked with new people, and began to reconnect with old friends. But there were still moments, late at night, when the world was quiet and I had nothing but my thoughts, that the memories of Adam would creep in. I would think back to the love we had shared, the laughter, the quiet moments we spent together. And I would wonder if any of it had been real. But then I would remember the truth. The truth about Adam. The truth about Amanda. And I would remind myself that I deserved more than the lies they had fed me. I deserved peace, dignity, and a future built on trust. One evening, I met up with Emma, my sister. We sat at a small bistro, drinking wine and catching up on life. It had been a while since we'd had time to talk. She had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal, and I was grateful for her more than she would ever know. "How are you really doing, Sarah?" she asked, her eyes soft with concern. I smiled, the weight of the question lingering for a moment before I answered. "I'm doing better, Em. I'm rebuilding. It's not perfect, but it's mine." She smiled back, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're one of the strongest people I know, and you deserve everything good that's coming your way." I felt a lump form in my throat as I looked at her. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. I had taken my life back. And while it wasn't easy, it was mine again. The phone call came a few weeks later. This time, it was from the lawyer's office. David's voice was calm, but there was a hint of something more behind it. "Sarah," he said, "we've received the final decision from the court regarding the estate. It's official. Everything has been redistributed, and Amanda's claim has been dismissed." I closed my eyes, feeling the relief wash over me. It was over. The fight I had fought for so long had finally come to an end, and I had won. Amanda had lost. I sat back in my chair, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I had been holding. The anger, the fear, the uncertainty, they were all gone. In their place was something new, a quiet sense of peace. "Thank you, David," I said softly. "Thank you for everything." "You did the hard work, Sarah," he replied. "You fought for yourself, and now you have what's rightfully yours." As the weeks turned into months, life slowly but surely fell into place. I continued to grow my business, and with every step, I felt a little more like myself. I had moved past the darkness, past the betrayal, and into a future I could now shape on my own terms. I thought about Adam, about the life we had shared. And though it hurt, I knew I had made the right decision. I couldn't stay in the past. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was never really mine. As I stand here today, looking back on everything I've been through, I'm reminded of the strength that comes from within. We all have the power to rebuild, to rise above the betrayals and challenges life throws at us. And while the road may be hard, it's always worth it in the end. What about you? Have you ever faced a betrayal so deep you didn't know if you could move on? How did you find your strength again? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to support more stories like mine.